Friends, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. Bobby and Lacey were married for 2 years. Since they were an adventurous couple, being active was not something they missed from their still young marriage. They experimented with blindfolds and toys. One weekend, Bobby tied Lacey up and made her his slave. He brought her breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and provided her with a considerable amount of liquid for her pleasure. She really enjoyed being a woman who likes to experiment. Outside of their personal lives, they were a perfectly normal couple. Both were in their 30s and both were very successful. Lacey was a mid-level manager at a marketing firm, and Bobby was a cool lawyer with a position just below the district attorney in the city. They had a lot of friends, and they went to dinners with couples and business partners. The absence of children meant a lot of free time to enjoy their marriage with weekends and sudden excursions. Everything seemed pretty perfect in their relationship. It all started on a cool spring evening in May. It was a meeting dedicated to the 20th anniversary of Lacey's graduation from high school, and she was very excited about this event. She could finally show off her new husband to everyone from her past and meet all her old friends. Bobby was wearing a sports jacket without a tie, and Lacey was wearing a sleek black dress. She always kept herself in great shape, and Bobby always attracted women's attention wherever they went, but Lacey didn't mind that. "Hurry up, dear. We're late," Lacey shouted from below. Bobby took another look at himself in the mirror and headed downstairs. Taking the keys and kissing his wife on the way out, they headed in the car to the designated place in their apartment complex. Their new house was under construction. Upon arriving at the event, they entered with the usual greetings and smiles that accompany such gatherings. Lacey, as captain of the cheerleading squad and president of the student council, was a kind of Mrs. Popular. Bobby followed her as she talked to different people. Friends she hadn't seen in years told her about their lives, and she and Bobby talked about how they met and that it was love at first sight. It went on for quite a long time. Later, Bobby and Lacey were left alone at the party. "How about another drink?" Lacey said. She, who had already drunk 3 glasses and had a good night, replied, "Why not? Just hurry back." Bobby headed for the bar, and Lacey stood waiting on the opposite side of the makeshift dance floor. The queue at the bar was long, as it was late in the evening, so Bobby took his place in the queue. While waiting to be served, he looked around the hall. The turnout for the 20th anniversary reunion was good, and he was impressed by the people who gathered for it. He looked back at his wife and noticed that someone was talking to her. The man was wearing a suit and tie and was about 6 feet 2 inches tall. Lacey had a big smile on his face as he watched their conversation. When the man finally turned around so that Bobby could see his face, he was grinning from ear to ear. He knew him. Bobby, who was served by the bartender, returned to join his wife and friend. "Tom," Bobby exclaimed, "what are you doing here? I had no idea that you knew my wife, let alone that you went to the same school with her." Tom was also a lawyer, but he worked for another firm. He and Bobby had casual conversations from time to time, but they never got personal. "Hi, Bobby. Yes, I graduated from this school with the prom queen." Lacey blushed at Tom's compliment. "So, did you two know each other, or did she walk past you in the hallway without looking at you?" Bobby asked jokingly. "Actually, Bobby, Lacey and I dated in high school and freshman year of college. I played baseball and got a scholarship, and Lacey studied with me." Bobby's face took on a more inquisitive expression. "It's really funny. I thought I knew about all her boyfriends from her past, but she never mentioned you?" Lacey's smile turned awkward as she began to adjust her dress. "We were both young and thought we knew what a relationship should be." "That's right," Tom replied with a hesitant smile that seemed a little less enthusiastic than before. Well, I guess we all learn when we get older," Bobby said, laughing, trying to defuse the obvious tension. Tom answered almost in a whisper, "I think so," casting a quick glance at Lacey, who was now very agitated and staring at the floor. Then Bobby changed the subject with Tom, and they started talking about work. As their conversation continued, Lacey withdrew into herself. She, who had been watching them talking to each other like best friends, now felt very uncomfortable and began to gesture for Bobby to end the conversation. She was ready to go home. Bobby and Lacey said goodbye to Tom and headed for the exit. At home, in a cozy bed, they started talking about Tom, So, an old guy was a secret. You never told me about a guy named Tom, Bobby said with a sly grin on his face. Lacey replied, well, a woman is allowed to have one or two secrets, right? Lacey said with a smile, taking off her jewelry to get ready for bed. Besides, I had no idea that you guys knew each other, and it's been so long that I forgot about it. Oh, yes, I often see him in courtrooms. He's a lawyer too, Bobby explained. And as for your secrets, that's up to you, Bobby said with an obscene expression, now watching his wife. About what? She answered, almost purring, as she entered the bed. About whether these secrets are related to fantasies, he said when their lips and tongues joined. Really? Bobby asked, his heart pounding. Fantasy? He clarified. Tell me about her now. You know how I am when it comes to love. I know, Lacey replied in a more serious tone. One of the reasons I love you is because of your imagination, but this one… Lacey paused, suddenly feeling awkward. Bobby sat up on the bed next to her, feeling her emotions change and seeing her expression turn restless. Honey, I'm your husband. You can tell me anything. What's it? Lacey sat in silence for a minute, searching for words to explain to her husband what she was thinking. Well, she finally stammered. We did a few things with blindfolds and toys, but… She paused again. Just tell me, Bobby exclaimed. This is embarrassing, she replied, and I do not know how you would feel about it. Honey, Bobby said, comforting her, can you tell me what you're dreaming about? Well, she continued, I've always wanted to be treated rudely in bed. Bobby looked confused. You mean rough love, darling. We've done this many times. I've squeezed you or pinned you against the wall. We've done it before. No, no, Lacey said, almost screaming. I mean really rude, she replied. And it should have been unexpected. I mean, you're just taking over my whole body, pulling, scratching, tearing me apart, and I wouldn't know when or if it was you. Bobby sat stunned while his wife described her fantasy, which he wanted her to fulfill. She won't know when or how. She described a situation of suspense, and when that happened, she would be tied up and gagged. She wouldn't even mind a few bruises. She was talking about strangulation and code words. Finally, Bobby stopped her explanation. You mean the rape fantasy? Yes, Lacey replied. I want my husband to rape me. It's crazy, isn't it? Lacey, now looking pleadingly, after she had lifted this burden from her soul, said, I know it would be difficult. That's why it's a fantasy. Lacey rolled over on the bed. Bobby turned to her, reached out and pulled her back to him. He asked, now wait a minute. Is this what you really want? Lowering her head, Lacey nodded slowly in agreement. When she raised her head again, they kissed, their eyes met. Then I will try to make it happen, because I love you. Lacey smiled as they kissed again. After making love, they both fell into a deep sleep, thinking about the evening and the conversation in the bedroom. 2 weeks had passed. Lacey was very busy at work because of a new client that their firm had attracted, and Bobby was helping the district attorney with a major case. Their lives have largely remained the same. Dinners, parties, but life has quieted down a bit because they were very tired. In addition, Lacey began to understand what Bobby called maternal fever. She mentioned wanting to start a family after the 3rd year of their marriage, and their 3rd wedding anniversary was approaching. She started monitoring her biological clock and mentioned to Bobby that she knew exactly when her ovulation time was and could match it by the clock. Bobby was impressed by her efforts to achieve such accuracy. It's been another 4 weeks since the night they had a conversation about the rape fantasy. Over the past few weeks, Lacey has noticed a slight change in Bobby. Nothing special, but he was getting more and more distant. He also wanted love much less. Lacey just decided that this was a man's way of reacting when his wife tells him she wants a baby and starts mapping her menstrual cycles. It's been 2 months since we talked about the rape fantasy, and it's become very difficult to talk to Bobby in the evenings after work. He was very irritable and blamed it on problems in the office and with the lawsuit he and the staff were working on. Lacey, trying to be a good wife, tried to comfort her husband with a little whiskey and a few back massages, but Bobby remained withdrawn. 10 weeks had passed since the conversation about rape fantasies, and Lacey decided she wanted to talk to Bobby about the state of their relationship. Bobby, Lacey said, we need to talk. Scary words that any husband doesn't want to hear. Bobby and Lacey entered the dining room of their apartment and sat down at the table. "What's wrong?" Lacey said. "Is that since that night after the evening of the meeting, you've been getting more distant? Are you mad at me because of what we talked about that night?" "I know. I said about starting a family. Does that bother you? Will you talk to me? What's going on with you?" Bobby replies apologetically, "No, baby. I'm not mad at you, and I want to start a family with you. I've always dreamed about this since I first married you. It's just that I've been under a lot of pressure lately in connection with this case, which has been so public. As for that conversation after homecoming night, I still have some ideas." Lacey smiled, getting comfortable. "So you want to make a baby for me?" "Yes," he replied, "but let's do it right. When is your next ovulation?" "In about 3 weeks," she said. "Okay, no love until then." "Agreed?" "Well, we didn't really do it anyway." "Okay, that's settled," she replied. That night, 3 weeks later, "I'll help you have a baby." "Great," she exclaimed with a fluttering heart. They kissed and went to bed, holding each other in their arms. 3 weeks later, that time has come. Lacey was finishing up some work in the office that she needed to do. It was about 4:30 p.m. Just as she was about to leave, her boss, Allison, burst into her office. "We have a problem. There's an urgent project that needs to be completed by morning, and your team has it, Lacey." Lacey's heart sank. She ordered champagne for the evening and a special bouquet of flowers for her dining table. Now she will have to work late. Her plans were ruined. "My husband will be furious," she thought. As she dialed her mobile number, she wondered how to explain it. "Hi, honey," she said when he picked up the phone. "Hi, honey, are you ready for tonight?" he asked. "I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I have to work late. My boss just threw an urgent project on my desk, and my team and I will have to work late tonight. Could we reschedule the meeting for tomorrow?" "Absolutely not. We'll just have to have a midnight dinner." Smiling to herself, Lacey replied, "Okay, I'll try to finish this and get back home as soon as possible." "I can't wait. I love you, honey," Bobby said. "Me too. I'll see you tonight." When she hung up, it was about 11:30 p.m. when Lacey pulled up to the parking lot at the house where they had an apartment. She is very tired. When she got out of the car, she headed up the stairs to the door of her apartment. Rubbing the back of her head in pain, she noticed some unusual things. So, the complex was usually well lit, but today it was in pitch darkness. Usually, when she pulls into her seat, she is surrounded by coupes and minivans, but tonight the parking lot was almost deserted. Without really thinking about it, she went to her door. The blinds were open, and the apartment was pitch dark, which seemed strange to her. Bobby was supposed to be home a few hours ago. As soon as she put the key in the door, it happened, and nothing could prepare her for what happened next. Before she could open the door, she felt 2 hands on her shoulders pushing her inside and pinning her against the wall. As she struggled to break free, a large gag was quickly placed over her head and wrapped around her mouth. It was fastened tightly behind her head to muffle any screams she might make. Then the attacker turned her around. Terrified, she tried to scream, but couldn't make a sound because of the gag. The attacker was wearing all black and a black ski mask. He slapped her twice in the face and spun her around again, tying her hands behind her back. She tried to fight, but to no avail. He slapped her again, causing her to almost faint. Then he carried her into the bedroom. 2 foot straps were tied to the legs of the bed. She watched in horror as a man in a black ski mask spread her legs and strapped them both in. Tears were streaming down her face. She tried to turn away, but he wouldn't let her do it. Then he decided to rip off her blouse. Reaching with his left hand to the floor on the left side of the bed, he pulled out a knife. Now Lacey was terrified of what he was up to. As the dark figure continued to use Lacey's fertile womb, she thought to herself, what a way to produce a child. He or she will never have to find out about it. Then, a new twist. Suddenly another figure appeared from the closet. It was another man. But who? Wasn't that part of what I was fantasizing about? She thought. Pacing the room, Bobby began to explain to his wife, while she was being used, about the last 3 months. He explained that after that homecoming night, he and Tom got together to go to lunch. Bobby told how Tom confessed that Lacey had been cheating on him for about 4 months before the meeting. He explained that Tom had told him all about their hotel rooms and secret trysts. He also explained to her the fact that Tom didn't love her, but just saw her as another piece of ass, exactly the way he saw her now. Bobby's voice became stern and angry as he shouted at Lacey. She, still tied up, started crying again. Tom was still using her. Well, darling, he explained, as I said, I'm going to help you have a baby. There's no doubt about that. Bobby went to the bedroom door and opened it. To Lacey's horror, 40 to 50 Mexicans from the construction crew that built their house entered. After the construction crew left, Bobby leaned over to Lacey and just said, think twice the next time you cheat on someone who loves you. Bobby and Tom took off the gag and untied Lacey. They left the room as Lacey curled up exhausted in the corner of the bed. Come on, Tom said. She needs to think about her baby. End.